If you've ever felt like you're torn between your homeschool goals and your business building or your work, then this live is for you. If we haven't met, I'm Teresa. I'm a graduated homeschool mom turned certified life coach here in the homeschool mom space. And I welcome you every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific. And at 1 p.m. Pacific, I'm going to have a chat with someone in the homeschool community that is serving in the homeschool mom community, or I'll bring to you something that's useful for you to enjoy your homeschool mom life better. So today I'm going to have tea with Whitney from Sensational Moms podcast, and you'll also find her here on Instagram at Sensational Moms. But I want to ask you first, what is the key to perfect balance? Does it exist? What is it we're really looking for when we say we want balance? What is it we're really going for in our business? Or what is it we're really looking for in our homeschool? What does it look like in the activities we choose and how we feel in those activities? So today I'm chatting with Whitney from Sensational Moms. Whitney is an occupational therapist and she's a coach and a highly sensitive homeschool mom of 4 who lives in Georgia. And she truly gets the marathon of motherhood, especially for moms who feel overstimulated, overwhelmed, and stretched thin. She helps moms understand their unique sensory needs and develop tools to move from overwhelm to connection and calm. Sounds like something that all of us could use. So welcome, Whitney, to the Homeschool Mom Chat. Hey,
Hey,
nice to
Teresa.
see you.
It's
So do you have
always
your
a joy
tea?
to see you. Oh, you got your tea. I've got my water. Oh,
Oh,
it
good.
is so hot down here.
I agree. It's so hot up here. It's like 30 degrees Celsius.
Oh yeah. Okay, so tell me the. I know we should know this by now, right? What is that?
It's not 100 for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ooh.
What are you guys?
I think it's actually a nice, cool, like 91 degrees Fahrenheit today.
You might be similar then. Nah, I think
Yeah.
we're cooler.
Oh, I hope you are for your sake.
Yeah, it's pretty hot for me. But so tell me about this week. Like in the last couple weeks, you started your homeschool routine again. And you are a working homeschool mom. And just to differentiate for anybody that hears me say working homeschool mom, but I'm a working homeschool mom and I don't have a job outside the home. I get it. I really, really do. I know you are. But I mean, somehow I have to differentiate the doing something outside of the homeschool experience. So either somebody working literally outside the home or building a business. But I'm curious, what would you say over the last couple weeks when you moved into your new routine again? How are things? What are things like?
Well, I think that there was like this initial false positive, I think like a honeymoon phase. Um, and then specifically for like one of my kiddos who really struggles more with dealing with routine that's feeling like it's imposed on her. So
Yeah.
that's been kind of a roller coaster, which it's amazing because no matter how many times you go through that as a mom, like I should know that by now, right? And then it comes back around and it just kind of knocks you down. So, just figuring out, okay, what does this look like? That's a good question, Teresa. I think it's like, figuring out, I know you talk a lot about time blocking. So it's a matter of me figuring out where do I shift things around now? Where do I squeeze in work in the margins? And then usually there's one larger block of time during the week where, like you said, out of the home, where I get to be intentional about going outside of the home to
Right.
do some work. And that's got to change days. And so I think I'm just in this phase right now where it's being intentional about just seeing where all of the pieces are falling together to see, okay, let's assess the situation, I guess, and see, what is this season going to bring? What is this, at least, the next, through December, right? Maybe what is
Mhm.
that going to look like? And just recalibrate and be flexible, and that flexibility can be really hard for some of us.
Yeah, for me.
Yeah, so you've always been so gracious to remind me to show myself what we show others, right? And so,
Yeah.
of course, this is going to be just a period of transition. So, just kind of taking a deep breath and, being in the moment and just kind of observing instead of going into, like a judgment mode of, oh, I can't do this.
Yeah, I really appreciate you sharing your story because I know that it represents many people's stories. And I also happen to know that there are a lot of new homeschoolers out and about these days. And the question often is, what are we supposed to be homeschooling right now? And here's the thing, and this is a very, really brief flyover here. It seems to me the farther south you go in North America, people start school somewhere in August, and then the
Yeah.
farther north you go, it's somewhere in September. Pretty sure it's tied to the harvest season. I don't know. But when it
No.
comes to, that's a school concept. We don't actually have to start anytime if we don't want to. I get that we feel compelled by that energy of the schooled world. But yeah, so Whitney happens to not be in Canada. She happens to be in the Georgia area. I'm in British Columbia. So just to clarify that, it doesn't start at the same time. But you
Yeah.
started 2 weeks ago. So how did it begin?
Yeah.
What did you include?
So really, we call it a soft start,
Mhm.
just kind of doing things that I knew were already, at least a few months ago when we were, doing things regularly, things that were working well for us.
Mhm.
So I think that we can oftentimes as homeschool moms feel like we just like have to start new and,
And
I
all of
think
it
it's a
all
marketing thing too, because, we get all these, shiny new things,
advertisement.
but
Yep.
shiny new thing syndrome. So I just started back with what I knew worked for me and my kids and what made us happy, really. And we started with those things. And then, there was a big change up this year with math with my kids. And so I knew that was going to be the one thing that we would start with that would, I would probably get some resistance with my kids. And just, I mean, trying anything new, like whether your kids are neurodiverse or not, there's just going to be an adjustment period. Like, I don't know why. Actually, I do know why. I've got 4 kids and I've got 4 math curricula because I'm crazy. So we were just trying to, there's going to be a learning curve, but I think the thing is not to start too many hard things at once. And so
Mhm.
that's what, the last couple of weeks have looked like for us. Like there are some things that I want to fold in for my kids that we won't add until probably September, just because I am not ready for that yet.
Yeah. Yeah, which is kind of important that you're ready for it. So how did you determine to be ready for August? Is that required by your state or is that just what you've always done? How did you decide on August?
Like speaking of weather, I think that it's because it's just so miserably hot here. There's there's
We,
part
we
of
don't
me,
really understand that up here, by the way. I can put it in my mind because I speak to so many people in the South. But to me, I'm like, what does it mean to be so hot that it feels like winter? That's hard for me to
yeah,
understand.
yeah. So that's exactly like our short stay up in the Midwest. That's exactly what it was like, except you looked out your window in winter and it was this beautiful, snowscape. But here you look out your window and you think it's a beautiful day to go outside, but you open the door and you're out for 10 minutes before you feel like you're going to die. So yeah, that's where we start. I honestly, Teresa, I would love to start earlier just because it's so hot in like toward the end of July. But as my kids have gotten older, speaking of the culture around us, they have camps, they have, all these other programming, they have sports that start back. And so, we have just kind of been enveloped in that sort of culture. We actually end later than the public school just because I need more flexibility. It's not just the kids. I mean, we're all going to have off days, but I know my nervous system and I know that I more than some other moms am going to come to a day where I just need a mental health day. And
Yeah.
so for me to have that, we just have to figure out how to shift things around. It's 180. It's that we just got to get to 180, very state to state, but we definitely aren't told when to
And when you
start.
talk about 180, you're talking about 180 instructional days for the year.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And you and I both know as real life learners, that is like super easy. I mean, with my paperwork, I mean, we're year round homeschoolers because we do.
Yeah, 180 days. I mean, okay, for the record, where I live in my province, you can and not enroll, you can become an online distance learner, and then you are responsible to the province. And, you know, through the Section 1213 of the School Act, which means, and I'm not going to quote the full paragraph, but it means you can choose an academic program for your kids, and it doesn't state any days or times. So if you are totally new to homeschooling, it's important for you to check your state or your province or the country's expectations of what's going on. I know there's some people that will challenge it and say, I'll just do whatever I want, and that's okay, your choice, but also your consequences. So for certain states, certain provinces, it's very different across the spectrum. But one thing I know for sure is that 180 instructional days, it sounds like a lot, but actually it's not really that challenging if you consider learning outside the scope of traditional schooled methods. And so I think the practice of a first year homeschooler is, and frankly, all the way up until probably 6 to 8 years or something, is to really notice what learning really looks like and what learning opportunities really are.
Yeah,
But
yeah, we were talking about our local government on the way down to like Tuesdays are we spend a large chunk of time out of the house, and on the way down we were talking about the school board and our taxes going up, and my
mm,
son said, well, why can't we just vote against it? And so we were talking about all of this, well, what do you vote for when you vote, and how can you voice your opinion,
beautiful. What a
civics, right? Heck.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Okay, so what did you call that?
Civics.
Civics. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Um, and that is so, I love that so much. I wouldn't have honored that or acknowledged that way back in the day. I would have thought, no, that can't be real learning. But yes, it really can. And that's exactly the kind of stuff that they harness inside classrooms too. Not that I think we should be looking to the school as a measuring stick, but that is actually some of the content that they use is those conversations. So noticing the conversations is really useful. But I want everybody to know your expertise. You are an occupational therapist. You have a Sensational Moms podcast that you bring to the homeschool mom community, and you do a special thing for homeschool moms. I would love for you to share exactly what you do.
Yes. So there's my dog. I come along moms who feel touched out and talked out by our kids in
Mm-hmm.
the high demand 24/7 lifestyle that is homeschooling. So I
Yeah.
come alongside moms and I help us understand what our unique nervous systems need to be able to thrive and have connection and joy with our children. So we figure out what are some practical self-care strategies that you can have that work for you in your daily life, and how do you understand that and communicate in those moments to your kids and to your spouse and anyone who's around you, what's going on and what kind of supports you need.
Yeah.
And so really just putting a plan and putting action to the self-compassion that can help us actually enjoy being with our kids most of the time.
Yeah, that's so well said. I really loved how you tied the self-compassion and actually wanting to be with our kids part, because I actually think that's like the prerequisite for wanting to homeschool is actually just wanting to hang out with our kids. But this is where I went into coaching in the homeschool space, is through that self-care angle, that I recognized my own burnout story and how prevalent it was with many other moms. It wasn't just me at that point. I been past that story maybe 12 years when I was writing about it. And then I came across loads and loads of people that had similar experiences. And we don't call it burnout, all of us. I didn't. I called it overwhelmed. Or I've heard you use the word overstimulated, or, lots of different words for it. But if we don't get really clear on our own emotional regulation and how to actually use those skills, we feel like we don't want to hang out with the kids. And that I hear as a common denominator in
Yeah,
burnout.
yeah. And it can be, then the guilt that comes from that for sure can
Yeah.
just really spiral us into a hard place to be as moms, especially if you're in a situation where you might really value the ideals of homeschooling. And maybe you really feel like your kid really would thrive best in this situation, but you feel like it is draining you as a mother. And it's a hard place to be.
It is a hard place, and it's hard to see what's actually really going on and to be clear in what's going on. I'm curious if anybody relates to this conversation point specifically. If you don't, I'll be really surprised actually. But if you do specifically relate to it and you want to share your story with me, I can always bring it into a Homeschool Mom Chat in the future. Next week, at 1 p.m. Pacific, I'll be actually having a chat with Amber O'Neill Johnston about her new book that's homegrown, that just came out. But in the future, in the next few weeks, I will bring up the conversation point that you bring here and use that as a jumping off point for a discussion as well. But so,
That's a great
Whitney,
idea.
yeah, thank you. What would you say is a real tool for working homeschool moms specifically, those that are either building businesses at home or they're working outside the home, to emotionally regulate?
I think that it's important to realize that we are emotionally regulating alongside our children, and it doesn't have to be something that is done separate of them. So, having them see us use emotional and self regulation tools is so invaluable as homeschool moms. So, yeah, some of those would be one of my favorites is leaning against the wall and walking my feet a few steps forward and just really feeling the sensation of that lean because that deep pressure feeds our sense of proprioception. You know, I'm going to nerd out a little bit. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, the proprioception is that deep pressure, and that is just if there were a magic pill for sensory input, it would be proprioception. So, you know, when you're feeling overstimulated and overwhelmed, proprioception. When you're feeling sluggish and having a hard time getting moving, proprioception. So it's kind of the great equalizer. So, you know, I love that one because you can do it anywhere. There's going to be a wall, you know, at the playground, at the indoor playground, when everything is just like going crazy. There's going to
Right.
be a wall at home. Sometimes I'll even put my hands on my chest and give some deep pressure that way. And then I
Mm.
can actually feel, okay, am I breathing shallowly or am I getting some good deep breaths through my diaphragm? So leaning against the wall, taking some deep breaths in through my nose, and just focusing on that exhale can be really helpful. Another one that feeds that same sense and kind of gets left and right brain going is crossing hands and kind of pulling apart that way and showing yourself some love. So you can tap back and forth, left and right. But again, it's that bilateral stimulation can bring you back into your body. And there's that magical proprioception we talk about as well through your chest and your hands. So
Mm.
in the car, that's great because we had a very challenging car ride today on the way home from piano lessons. I thought this always happens. Teresa and I have a conversation scheduled, and I get to live it out beforehand.
Yep. Good fodder for conversation.
Yeah,
Also proof that you're a real homeschool mom.
yeah. But it's been so valuable. I started really investing in this because I think it's easier to see struggles in our kids. I saw one child in particular that was really, really having a hard time.
Mm.
And, you know, this child wasn't interested in anything that I had to say or do or show. Didn't care that I have a master's in occupational therapy. None of that because I was just like, you know, a total mess. And you know, it's been years, right? Like I think we want quick fixes and those are rare and probably a lie.
Yeah.
But I've
I
seen her
totally agree
growth
with
and
that.
my growth.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that because actually yesterday I was listening to oh gee, I should remember the name if I'm going to reference it. Beck, is it Rebecca? Becky, Good Inside Out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I heard her on a podcast episode yesterday, and she was speaking to that, the many lies that we parents are told and how we should parent. And I'm like, yeah, we gotta get rid of this notion that we can do it just one right way and that we actually shouldn't even make mistakes. And she said something to the podcast interview that really just got me continuing to think. it so resonates with my 25 years of parenting that actually you're not supposed to be perfect. It's not useful for you to hit the mark all the time and
Mhm.
not have moments that you don't need to repair, you which won't happen anyways, but you actually need, or your child needs, those things for them to grow up and individuate. And I just thought, wow, that, I mean, it's hard for us to accept that, I think, because it doesn't quite ring the way we wanted it for our mothers and our fathers and how they would show up for us. But and so then we feel it's compelling to do differently with our kids. But that one really got me thinking.
You know what's interesting, Teresa? This reminds me of a letter that we got from a kiddo that we support in Uganda. It's a really unique situation. It's through a family friend that the ministry that they run is very small, and so we've actually gotten to FaceTime with these kids over the last, gosh, I'm going to say 7 or 8 years. So we've kind of gotten to watch them grow from a distance, and of course we exchanged letters and this and that. And we got a letter back from the young man that we support, and he, I don't know a lot of his early history, but he did have parents in his early life, and he had written a poem that he shared with us about this sort of realization that I used to not have, I used to have a hard relationship with my parents. I wanted them to be perfect, and they weren't. And he said,
Right.
now as I grow older, I realize that they're humans just like me. And he's 15 years old. And, this is around the world, a totally different continent. And yeah, it's all
That,
around us.
yeah. And I don't know all the factors as to why we feel compelled to do things perfectly, but we really just, we do. We just want to do it right. And I've said this so many times to different people, but we probably are the closest things to God on earth for our children because we care the most. We notice everything. They're constantly in the back of our minds, no matter what's going on or where they are in the world. Um, and also, we can't do it perfectly all at the same time. So it's a real challenge to address that mindset challenge and really accept ourselves, just like you're speaking, the self-compassion when we're having moments that are, they're not so great. We're overstimulated in the minivan and two kids are fighting over a car seat or a car or a seat. And I mean, I don't know if that was your issue in the minivan, but that was definitely
It
one.
has been before.
Exactly. Yes. But you're bringing in an element of the working homeschool mom life in your experience, and now how I see it, um, the expectations that working homeschool moms have of themselves and their homeschools takes like the homeschool mom experience to even a higher level because of the task switching required and just goals in different directions, even though I think there's value in, like, intrinsic creative value in the working homeschool mom life that fuels us, whether we're going away from home or we're just going away from our home to do some writing projects or to work in the basement doing something. But tell me, how do you actually decide what gets done?
Well, that is a great question, Teresa. How do I decide what actually gets done? I think that it helps to figure out what are our finite resources to start with anyway. That's where like the time audit comes in handy, to figure out, like I said, like this season, how many hours do I actually have? And I think I started doing something with my son yesterday, and I thought, why am I not doing this for myself? Um, but I'm trying to help him prioritize his time better, and in the morning, come up with a list of need to dos and then want to dos.
Mm.
Um, and then, whatever else he wants to put on the list. And I think that if I would do the same thing with my work, that would be really helpful. Because
Mm.
I think one of the unique challenges of being a working homeschool mom is that we can already fall into that comparison trap with our homeschool,
Yeah.
like looking at others. And so then you got that layer. And then you also add the layer of seeing what other people are doing with their work lives, whether they homeschool or not. And then you're kind of like looking at that too, and you think, okay, well, I'm not doing that, or I'm not on Instagram that much, or I'm not, doing that many podcast episodes, or how do they do that? And so then we're starting to compare that way too.
Yep.
Um, and so it's just an extra layer of, you could either lean into it and grow through it, or it can drive you crazy and you can get burned out and stop.
I'm just, I wrote and I am just in the process of recording a YouTube video on crafting a vision or a mission statement. And I remember the very first time someone introduced this concept to me, I thought, I do not have time for this. I am not going to be crafting a vision or a mission statement. That sounds like fluff. I got work to do. But work for what purpose? That's the question. And what I hear in what you're saying is the getting clear on what matters most. So you're giving your kid or your son a list of activities, and some of them are the must do, some of them are the would like to do, some of them are need to do, or those things may or may not happen in a day. But when we prioritize the things that matter most, and we be realistic about our resources, aka time, then we're able to maybe connect the dots. But when we do that vision statement, actually it helps us to also get clear on why there's not value in comparing to someone else. For myself, the word freedom was a big reason why I went into homeschooling, for so many reasons, the freedom. But so I saw the word freedom as useful, and yet I moved right into a very structured private school in my home that I have met very few people that have done it quite like the way that I approached it. And it was pretty intense, and it was sort of fun in certain moments, but then also extremely overwhelming, because talk about resistance. And then by year 3 or 4, I had the resistance as well. It wasn't just the kids. And so all of that wasn't freedom. So asking ourselves, like, what really matters, I think, is the question.
Yeah, yeah, I think you're so right. In some ways, I guess being a homeschool working mom is a blessing in that it forces us to clarify
Mm-hmm.
because we have less time. Um, we certain like yeah, definitely less time. I thought about that last night as I was up way too late doing something. I thought, oh my goodness, I would not tell myself to do this,
Yeah.
but sleep. All of these. If we're going to try to maintain a healthy, be healthy ourselves and figure out how to squeeze work in there and um, that constant reassessment, I think, is just so important to just be intentional about scheduling it out ahead of time and
Yeah.
seeing, okay, this might have worked 3 months ago or 4 months ago, but is it working for me now? And what might need to be tweaked? What could use a little bit of duct tape before it needs to be like so totally super glued back together? It's
Yeah.
just yeah.
Yeah, yeah, actually that's interesting. So returning to it a few times a year and asking ourselves, is this really working, and does it suit the season right now? And I know I often have a conversation with people about the seasons of their homeschool, and we're not all the same. And some of us truly are devoted to all year schooling and don't feel a surge of energy around, July, August, September. We're just like, yep, keep an even keel and just glad everybody's going back to school so we can hang out at the playground by ourselves. But also many people do experience like the excitement around September, and then the planning and the organizing. And then by the time Christmas comes, then everybody's like, okay, I think I need a reset. Like, we're not getting as much done as we wanted. It's a bit much, but we've got Christmas, so we're gonna have a few weeks off or a couple weeks off or switch to Christmas schooling or whatever everybody does. And then by January or February, and all the decorations are put away, and you're like, so
What just
I'm bored.
happened?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I'm bored, and maybe we should unschool, or maybe we should like do some unit studies, and then somewhere in April when spring comes and it's Charlotte Mason season. But I think there's, what you said, real value in asking yourself, what season are you in, and is this really still serving?
Yeah, I think part of that is you said the word energy, and I think that along like when we're thinking about what's working and what's not, um, her name is not gonna come to me right now, but Emily Freeman, Emily P. Freeman does a great job at talking about decisions and other things for people like me, and she frames things, encourages us to think about energy. What is life giving? And what gives us energy, and then what's energy draining in our
Mm,
lives, and assessing those things regularly.
yes.
I was thinking about that even with my business, right? I was just thinking how useful that would be because it changes. Like, if, for example, starting the podcast was a lot of work and it still is, but it's so life giving to me now, which I wouldn't have said a year ago when things were starting. But
Yeah.
now that some of those details have, on the back end have been ironed out as far as just editing, I really enjoy, sharing with my audience and getting to meet people and connecting people with resources that they might not have known about. So,
Yeah, it's very energizing. That's so true. That energy audit is something that I think is really useful for us, even on a monthly basis, because our cycles shift. Like when we're in the follicular or the luteal phase of
yeah, yeah,
the first couple weeks, we're probably at our highest creative energy, and then the last two things begin to wane, and we shift in a way. And in our productive culture, we want to say, be always available and on and productive. But reality is, we don't actually have the energy level to match. So we need to be considerate in how we're engaging even our energy month to month.
yeah, yeah. I can see that. And in here we're knocking on the door of perimenopause, right? We got to bring that up. I thought about you today, actually, Teresa. My ice maker, of all things, made me think about you because it wasn't working. Like, it's so frustrating. Refrigerators are just, I could write a book about refrigerators and our 16 years of marriage. But anyway, we've had this one for 6 months. The ice maker stopped working. Called the repair guy. It started working today. I'm like, I don't know what happened. But the unpredictability is what made me think about just perimenopause. And it's like you might think you're to a certain spot and then surprise. And I think
Yeah.
hormones can
Well,
can do that to us.
yeah, I'm just starting to work with a functional medicine doctor. Finally got into this appointment, and I won't go into all the detail, but I'll just say that in a 24-hour period, I did 5 urine tests, and I'm like, when I sat down with him to review the details, what I saw at the top was not pregnant. I'm like, uh, that was what I was testing for. I'm 51, so I.
You're like, oh, I passed something. Good.
But I gotta say, this whole perimenopausal thing, which I'll tell you, according to him, I'm not menopausal. And I'm like, well, I knew that. But whole, like, whatever is going on, it's so not predictable.
Yeah.
Whereas, at least in your 20s and 30s, or when you have babies, there's some predictability. And, like, did you just hear what I said, everybody? I just said there's more predictability when you have a baby. It's so true. I mean, I could go like this in a day. I'm learning how to actually do healthy physical things for that to address that, but it is so unpredictable. And I know that I'm primarily speaking to moms that are somewhere between 35 and 50, somewhere around that. If you aren't, let me know in the comment section. I'm curious if you
It's
aren't.
coming.
It's coming. Let's talk about it because it is real and it will affect your homeschool life.
Mhm.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. Coincidentally, my phone is propped up on Christiane Northrup's The Wisdom of Menopause. That's how
Oh, there we go.
ubiquitous that I'm always listening and talking about menopause these days, it seems. But you speak in your coaching, you talk about creating emergency plans and sensory savvy routines. What might that look like?
Yeah, so the emergency plan, I love acronyms because my memory is not the best. So the C is really helping us to develop a sense of self-compassion. So being aware outside of the moment, let's practice how we're going to talk to ourselves in the moment so that we can be aware of how to support ourselves in those hard times. Because no matter what we do, no matter how good our practices are, they're going to come, right?
Yep.
So that self compassion piece and the practicing the plan means in that moment, what do we say to our children or our spouse, whoever we're with, which I'm going to say children because if we're homeschooling our kids, a lot of times it's them. So let's figure out a way that can, in kid friendly, understandable terms, help them understand what's going on in my mind and body and what I'm going to go do to help me feel better.
Yeah.
So, um, a simple way that I used to start doing that with my kids was just saying, I feel really overwhelmed right now. It's not you, it's me. I'm going to go do whatever, which for me, when I started was literally walking to the mailbox. I'm going to go walk to the mailbox and I'll be right back.
Yeah.
So
And
knowing what I'm going to do and helping them, because, they're upset, if they see mom upset. So I ground them in that moment of what the plan is and how I'm going to support myself. And so I go do the thing and then we come back. And when I come back to the child, that's the R. The R is helping, reconcile if there was something said or done that I need to repair with the child. Because, like you said, we're striving to be good enough parents here. We're not striving to be perfect parents.
that's right.
So that's that work. That's the moment where we get to practice that with our child of taking ownership of what we said or did and making amends. And sometimes I'll be honest with certain children, that's not best done right afterwards. Sometimes with that child, it might be hours later.
Yeah.
But whatever the situation calls for, I'm intentional about coming back around and listening to the child as well and seeing what their experience was
Yeah.
and growing through that. So that's the CPR, compassion, practicing the plan, and then repairing the relationship.
That's beautiful. I love that. I love acronyms too. I love the acronyms and I find them easy to create. Actually, putting that into practice is a whole different thing.
Exactly.
It's a lot of work. And I think that's why we should call it a practice, emotional regulation practice, instead of perfect parenting. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it looks different, like back to the seasons, it looks different now with my children ages 7 through 12 than
Mm-hmm.
it did when they were 3 through, how old would that be? 3 through 8. Um, so it definitely can look different ways. It looks different now that I live in a different place, that I have different things available outside that I find really grounding for my senses, and I go do those things. But at the time, we had a postage stamp yard, but we had a driveway and we had a mailbox that needed to be checked. And I'll never forget the first day that one of my children, in the middle of a math lesson, said that they needed to go check the mail. And my first thought was, what do you mean you need to go check the mail? And then I realized,
Yeah.
wow, like she said she needed to go check the mail because that's what I do when I am
Amazing.
overwhelmed.
Yeah, that's amazing. I've heard Amy Otto say that too on Homeschool Compass podcast, that was her way of building in emotional regulation time, is walking to the mailbox. My mailbox is 40 minutes walk. So I think
Maybe
that's,
not.
well, I guess I could do it now that I don't actually have kids. So that's me.
Yeah.
You
But
know,
I think that like figuring out ways, like I love that, that's just a perfect example. Like now I get to go walk out. The kids know when I say I'm going to go check the chickens, and it's like, I don't need to go check the chickens. I've already done that. But they know when I say I need to go check the chickens, they know what's going on.
yeah,
Um,
that's good.
and, but you don't need anything, elaborate. We don't need to make it a whole separate thing or it probably won't get done. But there's ways in that short walk from here to the mailbox that I can use sensory input to ground myself and come back to the situation a different person.
So, last thought before we wrap up is this concept of balance. What have you learned about balance as a working homeschool mom? And I know you know what I think here, but maybe everyone else hasn't heard this. But I don't actually think you can do balance. I think we want the feeling of balance.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
practicing presence is really the practical way to feel balanced. So if we are doing our work, or we're building our business, or we're with our kids sitting down for lessons, or just spending time eyeball to eyeball with them, listening to them, we just want to be fully present. And if we feel fully present to everything and generally are investing an intentional amount of time to certain activities, then we feel balanced. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think in pictures a lot, Teresa. That's just how my mind works. And the reason I don't like the word balance is probably because my balance, like my physical balance, has never been good. But also, like, I just imagine, like this acrobat, like balancing things like on one foot and being, like you're on the edge of a cliff. Like, like how could you? I think that it's just an elusive concept, but I do respect the need to feel balance on the inside, to feel um I think present. I'm trying to think if there's another adjective that I might think that fits it as well, but willing to accept the gifts that are coming your way, like to notice. And that does come from being present, intentional, I think,
Yep.
can help us feel, can help us get that feeling of balance as well.
Mm.
Um, so when we have so many balls in the air, right? Like you're going to let go of something at some point. I think juggling, maybe that would be, and I know some people use those interchangeably, but I think that might be a better fit because there are certainly things that you're going to let go of at the moment, and you just have to be okay with letting go of it. It's like, for example, like right now is canning and preserving season. And so if you're really into that, then your housework is going to be gone. It's a wreck. My poor mom, whenever I go visit her, she's like, oh, the house is such a wreck. Don't look at it. I'm like, are you kidding? Of course the house is a wreck. You're spending, you have to be outside, 5, 6, 7 hours. You come in and you're prepping food. What do you expect of yourself? And it's
Yeah.
the same for us as homeschool moms. What
Mhm.
do you expect of yourself? You got to let it go. You got to figure out what to let go and be
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. That well said. Learning to let go. That's hard. That's really hard. And I know that we have wild expectations of ourselves, and the things that we're offering our family, and the time that we're spending putting food on the table if we are the cooks in the home, and doing the work and building the business. I remember having this conversation with you early on, when you joined the Business Builders, and I was giving you content or things to consider or videos or resources every day. And I don't remember what you said, but you said something that made me realize I am putting too much in there. And there is no way in the world that you would be able to do as much as what I'm doing right now. Like, of my 4 kids, I've got one that's living at home until tomorrow. I have a kiddo coming home to start a science degree, but I have one kiddo at home, and he's about to, graduate next year. And I have so much more bandwidth. I have so much more energy, minus the perimenopausal stuff. And I have so much more space than everybody. And so I realized then that my expectation, even just putting it in front of you, might have made you feel like you were compelled to do it. And yet, the same thing that I say to every mom is decide when you want to spend time building your business or doing your work. Decide when you want to spend time doing lessons or preserving or anything that you like to do, or need to do. And then say, okay, that is what I'm doing from 1 to 3 in the afternoon. I have to find a way to create firmer boundaries and make it happen. And sometimes it will, and sometimes it won't. But you'll know that that time is when you set it aside for certain things. And it really just is not possible to make or create or produce more than that. So then accept, just like you said, what is your reality? Do the things that matter.
Right. I think that a good way to practice that with our kids, that's not really even work related, but translates into that is just practicing telling them not right now. First this and then that. And I think so much as moms, we're just this ping pong ball, like back and forth, back and forth. And really it's been a couple of years now, like outside of my business even, where I just practice telling my child, well, first I need to finish this, and then I can help you with that. But I used to be the kind of mom that would just drop whatever I was doing then and go do the thing and not have that boundary of helping my child learn to wait. And so then, that's going to translate to business, right? Because it's easier for me to finish typing my post or editing that podcast if I've practiced saying, no, I can't tie your shoe right now. I need to finish chopping this apple, or something else. That's a lot lower stakes, right?
Yeah, I think it is. I think, as a life coach in this space, or for homeschool moms, I know that we can't always balance everything perfectly and do all the things that we want in an exact same measure, as we know we need to put into a can of peaches and make sure that there's exact amount of acidity to fruit to, all of that. We can't exactly do it perfectly like a recipe. um, Clearly I have peaches on the island right now waiting to be canned.
That sounds nice.
It is nice. I'm speaking to someone in peach region of the United States. But I think we can clarify what really matters and show up fully for the things that really matter. We practice presence. We let go of what we can't do. This is starting to sound like that acceptance prayer. But it is really accepting what we can do and accepting the season that we're in. First, the day that we're in, and then the week, and then the months that we live in, and then the entire homeschool year. But I know that we can do it. And I know too that Bill Gates quote that I had on a reel this last week, and I'm going to misquote it, but he essentially said, you underestimate how much you can do in a year, but you can do so much in 3 years. And I've seen that in my own business as well. So I know that you can do all the things, you just can't do all the things today.
Yeah,
So
we're not the machines that we think we are.
yeah, well said. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining me today. If you are a working homeschool mom navigating the challenges of balancing homeschool work and family, I do have support and tools for you. If you type 5 challenges into the comment section, you'll find in your DMs the podcast episode from last week, the 5 common challenges of the working homeschool mom life. And if you're looking for practical self-coaching tools, I've got a blueprint for working homeschool moms to act as like a journal for you to get clear on what really matters to you. And if you want personalized support to clarify your challenges, you're always welcome to join me for a free aligned homeschool reset session. Just DM me. And I want to mention, you really do want to check out Whitney's podcast, Sensational Moms podcast. It has been a pleasure to walk alongside you, to hear you really own your voice and put all the important things into the world that you do, and your unique perspective on emotional regulation. And I love listening to you share your stories. You've got a really beautiful way of just sharing off the cuff now and sharing all the expertise too. Very real, and I very much appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks,
Yeah.
Teresa.
So it was a pleasure to have everybody here today. Definitely let me know if you are also a homeschool family that is serving the homeschool community and you'd like to be here on the Homeschool Mom Chat. DM me. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you soon, Whitney.
Enjoy the day, Teresa.
Thank
Bye.
you. See you soon.